We have everyone? Yes. All right, here we go.
I'm fine. Yeah, whatever you like.
There it is. All right.
That's why
In business, there we go. Right, so it's 3:37. We're a little behind coming back at 3:30, but we are here. And our next budget item is, actually, I'll just give it to Steve and let him.
All right, next up is County Library Budget Unit 6022, found on page D253. And I'm not on that page, so I'll pass it over to the County Librarian, Christopher Veach.
Hello, thank you. So I'm Christopher Veach, the County Librarian. Thank you, Board of Supervisors, for considering this recommended budget and for the admin office for their work in putting this together. As Stephen said, it does begin on page D253 or page 297 of the PDF, if that's easier. So I have two budget units, 6022 and 6023, and they support the operations of the library to promote reading, literacy, and lifelong learning in Lake County. The main library fund, 125 Unit 6022, is primarily funded with a dedicated property tax approved by the voters in 1974. And those property taxes make up the majority of all revenues. But there are also various grants that fund specific programs, and I can get into that a little bit later. I did want to go over some of our accomplishments over the past year. So over this past year, use of the library has increased from the year before in all of the main metrics that we track. One of the main ones is circulation of library materials has increased both in print and in digital. And digital checkouts have grown substantially and now make up around 25% of our total circulation. So use of our public computers and Wi-Fi has also increased, and we now check out Wi-Fi hotspots and Chromebooks as well, and that's also been a popular item at the library. Also, attendance at our programs and events has almost tripled from the last year. So there's more people visiting our library branches in person and in some of our digital programs that we still do over Zoom. We've also been able to expand the amount of digital resources available to include resources for job seekers. And to help promote those resources, we partnered with CareerPoint, which is our local employment office here in Lake County. So this year also, I wanted to mention that we launched our Books by Mail program. And Books by Mail allows homebound residents to receive library materials for free through the U.S. Postal Service. This service is funded through a federal grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. So in this future year, in this budget, we plan to continue to increase spending on our library collections. That will let us continue to provide digital resources as well as make further improvements on our print collection. We plan to increase access to the library in multiple ways through attending outreach events, by expanding digital access, and by exploring more physical service points. On expanding digital access, we plan to provide access to an online database of newspapers to include local newspapers and a mobile library app. We are also looking forward to working with the IT department on improving the library's portion of the county website. Already this year, with the help of the state library, we are now able to offer online live tutoring and homework help through Help Now for BrainFuse, aimed at K through 12 students. So the library has won many grants that will impact this budget year. And the largest is our Bookmobile grant, which will help us purchase our customized Sprinter van to serve as a bookmobile and outreach vehicle. And this vehicle should be here in 2023. We've also won a small grant to conduct a National Endowment for the Arts Big Read program, which will occur in the spring next year. That our literacy program is still funded by the California Library Literacy Services grant. Not reflected in this budget yet are grant funds awarded by the state through the Building Forward Library Infrastructure program. We just received word last week of the state library's intention to award our library. Our grant application was successful, and the intention is for us to be awarded over $1 million for capital improvements at our library branches. that will have to be incorporated in the future. My budget unit also includes budget unit 6023, Fund 71. This is a small fund entirely funded by community donations and helps support our library collection and events. Library will continue to partner with our community nonprofits, the Friends of the Library and the Lake County Literacy Coalition, for the main source of community donations for the library. Thank you again, and that concludes my overview of the library budget, unless you have any questions or anything to add, Stephen?
Well, I was going to let the board go first.
Oh, okay.
Any questions from the board?
I just made a comment about the grant for the $1 million. That's incredible.
That's exactly where I'm going with it. It's $1,099,667 from, and then 500 and some odd thousand match. When is this going to possibly be approved? Because we probably should put it in now, unless it can, nothing needs to happen before mid-year. I'd rather probably put it in now.
The only thing we've received from the state is the intent to award, so we haven't received any other information.
So mid-year it is.
So there's a 500,000 match? Is that what you said?
549,835, and I was planning on using the FBA, some of the FBA to cover that, because that is general fund. Excellent.
I just wanted to mention it because it was in the news and people have commented on it.
These programs that are expanding are just really wonderful, Christopher. My family uses them a lot, and I know a lot of other families too, particularly the homeschool community. So I really applaud you on expanding these services. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the support that's allowed us to do that.
All right. So we'll open it up to the public. Anybody in Zoom that wants to speak on this item? Not seeing any hands, I'll bring it back to the board. Bless you. Oh, there.
No, he has a second budget unit.
Oh, okay. So we'll move on to the next one.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I think he did this.
Yeah, he talked about library improvements.
Yes, it did.
Quick question. I believe that you were hesitant or holding back from filling all your vacancies to ensure that there was cannabis funds that continued to flow, because I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you receive approximately, I don't know, 175,000, I think it's 194, but I might just be making that up, annually from cannabis for positions. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we do have unfunded positions. When we originally applied for the cannabis grant funds, that was before the salary increases. And so the cannabis funds that we were awarded didn't fully fund the positions. So those positions are unfunded.
And those, and actually it looks to me like if you take away the unfunded, that you're 100% filled in your positions?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm just kind of curious, is it possible to drop it down to 2 positions, 1 position, so that you can get those filled?
If that's the preference that we eliminate unfunded positions, I can look at doing that in the future.
Because I'll be honest with you, if we approved cannabis for positions, then let's make it happen, or else if we're going to keep it unfunded, I'd rather use the cannabis funds for something else than have it just stuck where it can be used, but it's not being used. And so I'd love to figure out how to make it actually worthwhile where we get something out of it.
So I would encourage him to fund them again with the cannabis. The reason why they were actually unfunded is the first go-round, it was only for a 6-month period. That's what we approved, not realizing that, 6 months, there's a whole nother 6 months when it comes to ongoing. So he was sticking at the half price. And from what I'm hearing today, if the board is amenable to letting him fill those positions, because that helps out in the branches, the library branches. Does that work, Christopher?
I can look into doing that, yes.
And I'll just be sincere and frank. I did not know that we used cannabis taxes to cover those positions. That was in the Form 4 or Form 5, which we never got and never knew, and reviewed the videos, and it was never mentioned that that was the case. I want to support it because I don't want to just back out, but maybe since it was 3 unfunded positions, can we drop it to 2? And that way it kind of opens up for more educational opportunities for like First 5 or some other group to be able to utilize those funds? And I guess I shouldn't be looking at you, I should be looking at the rest of the board. Because it was a bit of a surprise when I found out, because I came from, I don't know if it was a conversation with First 5 or whoever it was, and said how many, and spoke with Mr. Carter and said, how much funds do we have left in our education allocation? And was very surprised that the majority of it was already being utilized, and I know that I usually stay apprised as to what we're doing with our cannabis taxes. Again, I reviewed the videos, and it wasn't very explicitly stated, but it was found in the Form 5s, and it was requested.
And that's back on the original canned grants as well.
Yeah.
So that is possible, up to your board.
I also want to make it clear, those cannabis funds, I do not believe, are being held for those unfunded positions because they are unfunded. So were we to drop down those unfunded positions, it wouldn't reduce the reliance we have right now on cannabis funds.
I think it is being held in an allocation with the idea that this is supposed to be covered by that.
It's held not in your budget unit, but in 1072 because it is technically possible.
Okay.
Now, granted, we have enough unallocated to do a lot of things, but that is being allocated. Because when you budget, you allocate for the max, not the minimum.
And so I guess just to kind of be clear, I'd love to have the conversation, do we unblock all 3 unfunded, or do we do 2? But I think either way, we need to unblock something, or else money is just sitting there without a return on any of this investment.
I'm not really prepared to commit either way to that today. I would really want to look at what those positions could provide going forward and how it would impact our library system.
I think another part of this conversation is to be had after we get through the senior center project and figure out how that's going to be developed and if that outpost library is going to be there.
And I think we would need to have these conversations before, between now and mid-year, and make it, whatever the final decision is, make it happen mid-year, which is very doable.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So we're good then? All right.
Good, as long as we had that conversation so that we don't have something stuck.
All right. Mid-year. All right, so he did cover actually the other budget items, so I did open it up to the public, but I will again. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this? All right, bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve budget unit 6022 and 6023.
Second.
So I have a motion.
Wait. Did we do something with, no, the $1 million?
That's going to be mid-year.
Okay.
Mid-year and
Everything is
mid-year.
mid-year.
It's not.
Push.
It's only notice of it.
Right.
Sure. Now I remember. Okay.
So we have a motion and a second.
So, okay, we have a motion and a second. So, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Christopher.
All right, next up is Agricultural Commissioner, Budget Unit 2601, found on page D 137, and I'm going slow so I can get there. With the projected budget of $1,162,962, and I'll turn it over to Department Head Catherine.
Great. Well, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Crandall and Board. I would like to thank Stephen Carter for entertaining all my questions and Avella Cartero in my office for assisting with the budget. Catherine Vanderwall, Agricultural Commissioner, Sealer of Weights and Measures. So 2601 is the main budget for the Department of Agriculture and Weights and Measures. So in summary, my department is responsible for ensuring fairness and equity in the marketplace and protecting and promoting agriculture, the public, and the environment through the various programs that we administer. So the significant increase in Budget Unit 2601 this year is due to the capital asset listing to replace our 1982 International Weight Truck. Some of you have had the pleasure of seeing that. So the weight truck is a custom-built heavy-duty truck with a mounted crane, and it's used to test vehicle scales and other large capacity scales throughout the county. So our current truck, given its age, it lacks modernized safety features, and it currently cannot meet emission standards to be CARB compliant. So we are therefore restricted to the 1,000 miles per year. So additionally, some recent issues include mechanical failure of the truck, and Central Garage is not able to find parts to fix it. So we're just trying to keep it going right now. And because the weight truck is a custom item, it would have to go out, either for bid or through the RFP process, and it is something that might run into the next fiscal year before we actually receive it. Are there any questions for 2601?
Absolutely. What happens, is that the only equipment that you have for weights and measures for some of those large-scale things?
Yes, because it has a crane mounted on it, so the crane, we're able to move our 1,000-pound standards with the crane in the truck. And the truck itself serves as a standard.
Does it create a problem for the potential unexpected timeline that you might receive for when you start looking around for one of these?
To be honest, I don't know. We're just, the truck that we have right now is still in operation. So we're just kind of babying it along, and hopefully we can get a replacement before, it makes its final last drive.
Okay. For some reason, my first thought when you said it lacks the appropriate safety equipment, I'm like, did they have seatbelts in 1982?
It has seatbelts, but not much else.
Probably has manual windows too.
Yes, and no air conditioning.
That was my only question. I was worried about you not being able to fulfill the weights and measures part of your job if the vehicle dies and it takes a long time for us to be able to procure a new one.
Right, and that's why we want to start the process now,
Okay.
because it definitely might take a while to get a new truck.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No.
No? Okay. So I'll move on to Budget Unit 2701. So this is the Fish and Game Protection and Propagation Fund. So this budget unit supports projects that improve the habitat for wildlife and fisheries in the county and is funded by the state Fish and Wildlife fines, penalties, and forfeitures. So my department manages this budget for the Lake County Fish and Wildlife Advisory Committee. So the committee receives project ideas from the community and then recommends approved projects to your board for approval, such as the ones that you approved in the previous fiscal year, which included the Clear Lake Bass Tournament and the Welcome Anglers signage that's been put up all around the county. So are there any questions for this budget unit?
No questions.
Okay. I'll move on to the last one. Budget Unit 2714 is the Biological Community Fund. So this budget unit funds the USDA Wildlife Services Program, which provides assistance to the public with nuisance wildlife. This program protects public health and safety, reduces livestock depredation, and mitigates property damage caused by wildlife. Any questions for this budget unit?
No, I'm not seeing any. No.
That's all I have.
You had some easy ones.
All right. I'm going to open it up for public input if there's anyone in the public that would like to comment on these budget items.
Actually, let me,
So I'll close public input and bring it back to the board.
hold on, I wanted to look at something real quick. I'm looking at your staffing, and I don't have it right in front of me. There we go. Five out of 6. And is that the deputy that you're working on, or?
No, the deputy position has been filled.
Awesome.
So in doing so, it created a vacancy, which we were working on
Shit.
filling. Yes,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So with that, looking for action?
Do we do public comment?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I move to approve Budget Unit 2601, 2701, and 2714.
Second?
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, Stephen.
All right, next up is Information Technology, Budget Unit 1904, found on page D59, with a requested appropriations of $2,310,717. And I'll turn it over to the IT Director, Shane French.
Thank you, sir. Well, good afternoon, Board. I am Shane French, Director of IT for the county. I wanted to talk to you quickly about some of the things that we did last year with funds that were allocated to the department. One of the things that we focused on was implementing some additional security systems for our critical systems, such as servers and critical endpoints. As I'm sure you know, cybersecurity is becoming a increasingly hot topic in our department, and we're trying to prevent any significant threat from getting at our network and causing harm to our systems or county data or to our employees or to the public. We actually were able to reduce costs last year for some of our backup systems. We send some redundant copies of backups securely to cloud services, and those costs were starting to creep up quite a bit last year, and we actually ended up reducing the cost greatly, so that was kind of a win there. We also began our website redesign and migration project. That kicked off last year, and we made some progress so far working with the vendor, Civic Plus, and they're currently in the design phase for that project. And then finally, you know, we increased our ability to mitigate ransomware attacks if they are to happen. We're in a much better place than we were previously to deal with attacks like that, and those are just a constant threat. As far as upcoming, you know, what the budget will be funding this year, of course, that same project, we're looking to finish up that website migration project. My hope is that will be finished up here late November, early December. That's kind of the slated date for that to be finished up. We're still working on implementing a document management system countywide that was piloted by the administrative office and human resources. But the intention here is that all departments will have access to that system, will be able to use it. That's a very exciting project to me because it's going to allow for a lot of automation that we just haven't been able to pull off previously. It's a very, very cool system, very configurable, and has just a lot of opportunities for collaboration between departments. I'm really looking forward to departments leveraging that. We have also this year, we're looking at upgrading productivity tools such as Microsoft Office, something that hasn't been done in quite a long time. Talk about that a little more in a minute. And then, of course, as always, enhancing cybersecurity initiatives, looking to do some end-user security awareness training, as well as bring on some additional security services from vendors that will help us to avoid and mitigate any threats, because they just really are coming at us all the time now. I did want to kind of just talk about some major themes in our budget this year and in the coming years. I think, you know, there's been a major change from capital expenditures to operational expenditures in our industry. Pretty much everything is going subscription-based. It used to be that we would purchase a physical asset, we would install it, it would serve us well for many years, we would maintain and operate it, and then we would replace it kind of forklift style after many years. That's just not something that is continuing to be available to us anymore. Really anymore, it's they want to sell it to you once and sell it to you again and make you subscribe for it. Cloud services, while they can be very powerful and very helpful, and certainly we leverage those cloud services where applicable. They tend to cost more than the old school buy it once and use it up for many years style of software and services. So, you know, I'm always looking for opportunities to leverage the assets that we have, but it's becoming harder and harder to do that. And that's actually reflected in this year's budget. You're just going to see that those operational expenses, those services expenses are rising, I think, rapidly. And I just want your board to know that I'm doing everything I can to keep them from rising any more rapidly than they have to, but some of it's just unavoidable. Again, the cybersecurity spend is increasing as well. You'll see that in my budget reflected this year and last year and next year too. It's increasing all the time. The amount of services that you need to deploy to truly secure your network is just, it's increasing every year, and you can't just get by with the bare minimum anymore because the threats are just too advanced. As far as revenue, our revenue has been pretty strong for a number of years. It's been relatively stable. It does fluctuate from year to year depending on the demands of departments. But overall, it's pretty stable just by virtue of the way that we charge out the departments. And then as far as changes this year specifically, you'll see in here there's an item for an increase again in licensing costs for migrating to newer versions of the productivity suite. And again, that was done after an evaluation of purchasing a standalone license, and it's just not cost effective to do anymore. I mean, for example, Microsoft has raised the cost of that product almost by double, and they reduced the support timeline. So you can't just buy it and keep it forever because you're not going to get security updates and these kinds of things. They're making it to where it just doesn't make sense to do that. The other big theme in our budget this year is we've gotten a very significant allocation of ARPA funds to the tune of about $650,000 over 2 years. To give you an idea of some of the things that we're working on, again, cybersecurity, looking at advanced detection capabilities for threats coming in on endpoints and on edge devices. We, of course, have that CMS website Civic Plus project where we're actually redesigning and migrating our website. Some of that is going to be covered by ARPA funds. Network infrastructure, the actual equipment that facilitates communications between departments. We're doing some replacements there of some aging systems, and those can be pretty expensive depending on what they are. And to kind of give you some details on that, some of that infrastructure will be replaced that services the Clear Lake and Lower Lake area, and others that services the Kelseyville area primarily. There'll be others, but those are the main ones. And with that, that's pretty much what I had for you, so if you have any questions.
Do you have a question?
I do want to mention one thing, and I need to look at your, what's your staffing situation right now, too?
Sure. So we have 7 out of 10 positions filled. We have 2 IS analyst positions that are not filled currently, and we have a deputy director position that is not filled currently.
Okay. And are you struggling to find people, or?
No, we've had a few recruitments here recently where we got pretty close to the finish line, and as things do during that process, sometimes for one reason or another, you can't bring the candidate all the way to completion. But I wouldn't say we're struggling. The other thing about it is in our department, there's quite a bit of training that has to happen. Even for folks that come in that have some experience, they need to be familiar with our systems and the way that things are done in our network, and that can take some time. And it's kind of hard because we are so small, to train a whole bunch of new hires all at once. It just makes it more difficult because there's a lot of one-on-one work with the staff. So no, I think we're in the right place there right now, yeah.
So How many buildings are you dealing with? Because, I mean, we talked with Director Ewing about the number of buildings that his staff work with. I'm guessing it's something similar, except for maybe like social services has their own thing for IT and things like that.
Yeah, so, certainly we support social services on a network level. There's about, my map of the network has about 50 locations. Now, not all of those have human beings in them. Some of them are relay sites and these kinds of things, but I think there's actually over 50 now, yeah.
Because I think that's an important thing to recognize within the budget, that it's not, I mean, we visually see it all the time here in the courthouse, but it's so much more than that. I have no specific questions about the budget. I know that we've invested in keeping our network secure. We've invested in the website, and I do want to thank you for your advocacy for making sure that we get our money's worth when it comes to working with our contractor for the website. I know I've been involved intimately with that conversation, and I just appreciate the fact that you are looking for what everyone else is looking to get to. So, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Open it up to the public for any comments on this budget item. All right, I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve Budget Unit 1904.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
Stephen?
And, sorry about that. I'd like to potentially change up the schedule, because we have 3 different departments that are not from this building, and the next 2 off-site, off-site. So if we can move down to animal control, animal care and control, budget unit 2703, found on page D153.
The auditor controller has to stay with us anyway.
She does, and treasurer tax collector similar. I'll turn it over to Mr. Armas, the department head.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Jonathan Armas, the director of Lake County Animal Care and Control. To start with 2703, the Animal Care and Control Department. Just a quick overview. We respond to calls for assistance from the public. We handle stray animals, aggressive dogs, injured animals, welfare checks, bites, that type of thing. Last calendar year, we responded to 1,150 calls, and we were able to take in 1,600 animals with an 81% live release rate. The big change from the previous fiscal year to this one is our salaries, which is largely from the class and comp study, but also we went from we reduced our 900 extra help employees by 10 positions, and then increased our 3/4 full-time positions by 3. And I think it was around a $10,000 difference between keeping the cost of the 900 hour to the 3/4. Everything else is practically the same, and I don't think I have anything else in that budget unit. If there's any questions.
Was it earlier in the year that we added some positions?
We did the position allocation in July. On July 1st is when we made that change.
All right. It also, you said 1,100 calls, but here it says you nearly 2,500 calls for service, so you did a lot more. So it says here.
Uh-oh. On my, let's see.
You were just being humble, it's okay.
I ran those numbers yesterday, and
Okay.
I might have gotten my dates wrong on the system, but any other questions for 2703?
No.
Okay.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
And then for 2711, it's the medical clinic. It largely assists our shelter. It's there to provide any medical care that animals require, which the animal control is required to provide. We also keep our adoption costs low because we're able to spay and neuter inside our own program. And then they do a community cat program, low-cost spay and neuter program, and vaccine clinics for the public. Our veterinarian passed away in March, as many of you know. We still have yet to find a replacement for that position. The honest answer to that is just we're nowhere competitive in pay anymore. There's a huge shortage for that that type of career right now. We are still doing vaccine clinics and community cat surgeries, but the big change from last fiscal year is we had to put some money into specialized services. We do have a contract vet currently for 1 day a week, and we hope to find a vet.
Supervisor Spatier?
Yeah, I don't know how long we will have Dr. Sally to help out.
She's informed me that there will be an end, and it will probably be sometime within a year.
Ooh. My question for you is, I know that we contract with the city of Lakeport, and I know it's been a long time since we reviewed that. I'm really hoping that we can review that as I see your appropriations increase. I want to make sure that we're getting the same percentage increase from those that are contracting with us as well, to make it fair for if we're seeing an increase in the level of need, especially with the salary increases, I think those need to be applied to any of the contracts that we have with others that we're providing the services in return.
So, because we kind of discussed that earlier this year, I have reviewed it. I have sent the numbers over to Chief Rasmussen and for his review, and I'm hoping to have all of that tied up by the end of this year.
Okay, thank you.
All right. No other questions? I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on this item? Not seeing any hands up in Zoom, I will go ahead and bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve Budget Unit 2703 and 2711.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries.
Thank you.
JT.
Do you have your adoption event on Saturday?
Yep, we just set up. We have 4 dogs, 4 cats that are ready. We just went over to that ranch, which is next to Rainbow Ag. They're all set up. It looks like it'll be a good event. We're excited.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, next up will be Probation, Budget Unit 2302, found on page D129, and their requested appropriations are $6,572,946, and I'll turn it over to the Chief Probation Officer, Rob Howe.
Good afternoon, Board. I guess it pays to come in person. I got upped a little bit. I'd like to start out with, as usual, a couple thank yous. Mainly that whole table over there, Ms. Parker and her staff, and Ms. Saderlin and her staff. More specifically, Stephen Carter, he's been my budget guru now for several years. Always a pleasure to work with, the communication, coordination, and they're very responsive, helpful. It's very appreciated. I've gone through some turnover in finance people, so their patience with my office deserves a thank you. So in probation, I'm going to skip our main overview of the department. I think you guys have read it before and know exactly what we do, but I would like to go into a few details and then maybe some accomplishments and some things we want to accomplish next year. So we are a general fund department. We do seek and rely pretty heavily on outside of general fund revenue. With numerous grants, state and federal funding, and with some contracts for our service, it puts us right around 40% general fund, so 60% of our revenue is outside of general fund. Not a lot of significant changes in our budget this year. Like most, if not all departments, the biggest significant expense was due to salary and benefit increases with the salary survey. We have been fortunate enough to get some new revenue coming in this year, always a good thing. SB 129 is the pretrial funding bill. That came about in, I think it was 21, and SB 823, juvenile justice reform, or realignment, basically the closure of DJJ. Both of those Senate bills came with some funding. Of course, they came with a lot of new responsibilities for that funding, but there is some money there.
That's ongoing revenue?
Yes. Well, assuming we jump through all the hoops that the state makes us, but yeah, we anticipate it being ongoing. The 129 funding, I'll get into that a little bit, but that's actually awarded to the courts. And then the courts have to contract with local probation departments to provide the services of pretrial. Now, the courts can agree to give us, I think the allocation is 200 grand. They can kind of agree to give us whatever they want. Our courts are working really well with us, and it looks like they're probably going to give us the entire 200,000 annually. They don't, the expense comes with us, you know, supervising the people, so. But yeah, it is ongoing. As far as some accomplishments from last year, we did return to in-person programming with a lot of our probation clients, mainly with a partnership with Woodland Community College. This was a great program we started over there. Not only allows us to do our programming in a classroom kind of environment, but it allows us to take advantage of college courses, college entry stuff for some of our clients. We also increased our clients' ability to work online by loaning out equipment, essentially laptops, so they could do Zoom meetings and things like that. Of course, those things were all determined or made possible or made necessary with COVID, and now that we're getting out of that, we are returning, as I said, to some in-person stuff, but we found a lot of value in the things we were doing. You know, with this huge lake in the middle of our county, transportation's always been difficult, so the more programming and classes and meetings that we can do through technology, we're gonna keep doing that. We did also put our devices out in our local peer support centers. We have one in Clear Lake Oaks, and Lakeport, I believe. We also partnered with the Office of Education to reintroduce our family wrap program. That's something I believe I've spoken to the board about. We lost that through some funding a few years ago, and it was good to get that back. About a third of our juvenile population takes advantage of that program. It's a program that, as you know, helps prevent the kids from getting into the system, those at high risk. Let's see. We partnered with Lake County Superior Court to implement a pretrial services program. And by partnered, I think we're required. We're kind of made to do this. As the board, I'm sure, is aware.
Forced friendship.
Yeah, well, we've been doing it since the Humphrey Court case, which basically said bail can't be denied based on cash alone kind of thing. And that changed the rules a lot, started a lot of legislation and a lot of bail reform. And that was back in, the case was actually 2017, but didn't really start taking effect until 2020. In 2021 was when SB 129 came into effect, and that was when the courts got the funding. So I say we partnered, but we're doing that, and I'll speak a little bit more about that program. It's one of the concerns we have going forward, but I'll talk about it later. We collaborated with community partners, including behavioral health, the Hope Center, Elijah House, Adventist Health, Lake County Office of Education, Lake County Department of Social Services, North Coast Opportunities, and Pastor Shannon to continue a housing navigators program. This assists our probationers in finding housing after incarceration. Last year, the group was able to assist 55 clients, and they're looking at trying to improve upon that this year with rental assistance, SLAs, Hope Center, all those kind of different service providers. We also last year partnered with Kelseyville Unified School District to place school resource officer there. I think I brought that before the board. We have that position, and we have more, and I'll talk about that a little bit. I like the SRO program. So moving into some goals, we plan to partner with Mendocino College, much like we did Woodland, to do the on-campus courses this year. We're in talks and should have an MOU shortly with them. Again, the benefits are we can provide all of our training in classes like MRT and job readiness, anger management, all those kind of things, in addition to the college entrance process assistance. I'm going to talk about our case management system right now. We intend to implement an auto alert system to ensure that those on pretrial supervision, a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about is pretrial, we're doing a lot with that, but to ensure that they actually attend hearings. This is the function that I think we're going to be able to fix with our caseload management system, but we're doing it in person right now, our clerical staff. It's basically calling people to make sure they show up for court because bail is really not a common thing anymore. Let's see, to kind of wrap it up, Challenges I see going forward for probation, first is staffing, and I know you hear it, we all talk about it. I've heard Sheriff Martin discuss it earlier, and I agree with a lot of what he says. I think it's, especially in the law enforcement world, it's not Lake County, it's statewide, it's in fact nationwide. I think it's cultural, generational, there are a lot of issues and no easy answers to that. But I think the board has made some good choices, some big steps toward improving it with the salary increases and the hiring bonuses, those kind of things. I think we're heading in the right direction. I'm always an optimist with that. I think, especially in the law enforcement world, there's a pendulum. You know, you can be popular to be anti-law enforcement for a while until people figure out that doesn't usually really work and it goes back the other way. And I think we'll get there. So again, I'm optimistic. I think those decisions made by the board and admin are going to pay off. To talk a little bit about our department, our vacancy rate's about 20% department-wide. But we've had some positive things happening. In 2022, so far this year, we've hired 3 deputy probation officers, 6 in the past 12 years, or excuse me, 12 months, 12 years. That's probably not that far off, but 12 months. We currently have 4 in background and 3 that have passed background and are waiting for medical. And I think that's a really good sign that some of the new steps and new procedures are working. That, of course, also shows that there's been turnover in the past, that we have that many to hire, but it's a positive thing. And I think moving forward, I think we're going to be okay. The other challenge going forward, and I mentioned it a few times, is pretrial programs. This is, so departments throughout the state, they're basically having to create pretrial agencies or divisions within their own departments. And a small department like ours, if you can imagine trying to create a new division with hiring being like it is, it's very difficult to do things that just a few years ago we didn't have to do. When I say that we're doing things we didn't have to do with pretrial, we're now supervising, providing classes, programs, assessments, we're testing people. And all these people have not been committed of crimes, they're not on probation, and prior to bail reform, they would have either been in custody or on bail. So far this year, last year is kind of the first full year we were doing pretrial on an informal basis without the funding of SB 129. And we got 21 people referred all of last year for that kind of, for pretrial services, which isn't that big. But this year so far, in the first 3 months of this fiscal year, we've got 28. That doesn't sound like a huge number, but it shows you how quickly it's growing. And again, those are all in addition to what we've already, this is new stuff. These are normally people we wouldn't see that we'll be dealing with now and for the foreseeable future. Again, the board, admin, you've been really good to us in the past couple of years. Our allocations, I think, are sufficient. Our hiring, we're seeing some progress. So as we hire, I think we'll be okay there too. And that's really all I have, except for questions that maybe I can answer.
And you're loaning staff to the jail?
Kind of, yeah. We, the deal is we have assigned probation officers there, their workstation is there. You know, as Sheriff Martin as I'm sure, been here for a few of his presentations, legally he has to have a female there on campus, so to speak. We're providing that. We're fortunate enough to have several employees in our department who are qualified, who have the STC core course for corrections. So not only is it a female as required by law, but it's someone who's actually qualified to be there if they do need help. But primarily, that's their workstation. They're doing probation work and assisting as needed with the sheriff's office. And I did hear that, the presentation, and I appreciate you, Supervisor Spate, for being concerned with my department and how many are going to leave. And of course, that came to mind to me too, and it's a little bit of a concern, but with this, you know, they need help, we can help. As far as what happens with how many people, if any, we lose, I will say that most of the people we have them because they came from that. So I'd like to think they're going to stay, but appreciate that concern.
Just keep bringing the donuts in the morning and
Do something, all right?
Supervisor Sabatier?
So I do have a question. One is more just how things are affecting you with the new bail reform. What is your view of that? Is it working? Are you able to get people to court? Are you seeing a higher percentage of people skipping out on court?
Well, asking me if it's effective, that's getting into a real big political conversation. Obviously, bail reform is questionable throughout the nation, and you read in the papers all the time about people who are out that maybe would have been on bail or incarcerated committing crimes, and that's going to happen. With us, the impact is just staffing. Again, we're doing very much the same thing we would do with a probationer, except these people, of course, aren't on probation. So, and it's all with what the court orders. Sometimes they order full supervision and testing. Sometimes they just want a weekly check-in. So it really depends. As long as our staffing holds out, and again, I'm optimistic, it's really not, it's not that much of a hardship for us. When SB 10, if you recall, was first coming around, that was calling for a whole bunch of other stuff that would have been problematic. Basically, we would have had to do assessments on everybody arrested, and
Within
reports.
24 hours.
Yeah, reports completed into the courts within 24 hours. That was going to essentially make us into a 24/7 operation, which is a big change for us. Fortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Our courts work with us really well. Again, we're handling maybe 28 at a time. Some of those could be pretty long-term. That is going to increase over the years, I'd imagine, but with the funding from SB 129 and the position allocations, I think we'll be fine.
I'm very interested in looking at the long term, just to see who does show up to court. Is it the same percentage as before, where before the bail bondsman would be able to go after them if they didn't show up to court? But here, it's like you said, you're making a phone call. How effective is that leverage in comparison? So I don't think we'll know right away, but I'm very interested in knowing.
I'm interested too, and our leverage, as kind of explained, will really depend on what a judge orders. Because a judge may just order, we call them, and they're probably not going to show up because they wouldn't have showed up before. But there are those with electronic monitoring and full supervision where we have a little more teeth, so to speak, to get them to show up.
Right. And I couldn't quite pinpoint it, but I know that historically, so your revenues seem pretty normal as far as the growth, but the final recommended in your expenditures is quite a large jump. In 2021, your actuals was 4.2, estimating last year of 4.6, and here we're doing a final recommendation of 6.6 almost. Just kind of curious where the extra is going, because it definitely there's a 500 or so just in the, maybe even more, 600 or so in the salaries, 700, but just wondering if there's anything other than salaries that's pushing that up.
Well, I'll look over to Stephen for help with some line-by-line things other than salary and benefits. I didn't notice anything huge.
Because I just didn't see a 2 million increase just within the salaries. At least it didn't jump out at me like that, but when I looked at the bottom and made that comparison, that 2 million is quite a large change. And maybe it's just a whole bunch of numbers, and eventually there's enough of a difference to add up to that, and I'm just not seeing it.
I will say a good chunk of it is salaries, because he's had multiple vacancies, and it sounds like he's hiring them. But I'm also going down the list. It looks like it's a whole lot of here and there's.
A
Yeah,
lot of
there
little
are
things, yeah.
plenty of insignificant ones, but yeah, most of it's salary. Ours was huge, and we are anticipating being a whole lot closer to fully staffed for this year than we've been in the past with our, well, like I said, with everybody in background, hopefully passing.
And the other large one is support and care of persons, which is for your child, I believe, right, your 4E.
That could, we were spending, and the board approved this contract with Tehama for an additional $100,000 to go towards a partnership with Tehama County to develop the programming necessary to, I've spoken a little bit about SB 823, Juvenile Justice Realignment. Again, essentially for that's just the closure of DJJ. So any youth that would have been sentenced there in the past is our responsibility now. Of course, since we contract out for those services, we have to have an option. We're fortunate that we don't have anybody sentenced to that. What DJJ is and was CYA before that. The kind of the worst of the worst for juveniles, very violent sex offenders. heavy mental health issues, that kind of stuff that frankly most facilities aren't capable of handling. So that 100,000 went, again, with approval of the board in that contract towards establishing that ability to handle that for the future.
And I will say-
5402 is a jump too.
64.
5402, corrections.
The statistic that jumps out at me, and I think it kind of relates to the conversation we had yesterday about the rec facilities and the pool facility, is your 100 juveniles that you're currently tracking and seeing and on probation, and that is a huge number, and I hope that things like the conversation yesterday can impact to keep them out
Yeah.
of those types of situations.
And again, that was actually in the overview was written back in preparation. That's decreased actually quite a bit. I'll get the exact number for you, but, and it's likely to increase significantly in some new legislation that wants to reduce juvenile probation terms to 6 months. Looks like that's going to get signed. A lot of entities, CPOC, chief probation officers oppose that. I mean, most of the programs, like sex offender programs, are a year. How do you do that if they're only on probation for 6 months? But
And this is the chance to rehab
yeah,
while they're still young, too.
yeah.
So,
But
thank you.
don't have a lot of control over that one.
Yeah.
All right, we'll open it up to public input for any questions on this budget item.
No questions.
What's that? That was muting. Oh, okay. All right, not seeing any hands, I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve Budget Unit 2302 as presented.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you all.
And then, Steve, go ahead.
So at this time, I just want to ask the board if they wish to go beyond 5 o'clock, because we have Department of Social Services, and it would be it seems like it would be a natural end to the day, and we can come back fresh tomorrow, but of course, it's up to your board. And that way, I can also notify the departments who are waiting to be called forward to let them know that they can come back tomorrow morning.
I'd be good to go through social services myself. I think
Yep.
that would be a good way to end it.
And
Yeah.
I don't want to stay here much longer than necessary for staff's sake. They've had a full day as well, and we need to make sure to
Right.
give them that rest. Sorry.
All right, so with that, it looks like we have a consensus
Thank you,
to
sir.
do that. And so what we'll do is I'll let Stephen invite social
All
services.
right, last one of the day, Social Services Administration, Budget Unit 5011, found on page D229, and their requested appropriations equal $34,636,457. And I'll turn it over to Department Head, Mrs. Marketan.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm Crystal Marketan, Director for the Department of Social Services, Executive Director for Area Agency on Aging for Lake and Mendocino County, and Executive Director for our housing program. And with me today is Mickey Dolby, our Administrative Deputy Director. And I just want to add a big thank you to Mickey. This will be her last budget. She is retiring, and I'm really sad, but good for her. She does a lot there, and I just so appreciate her. Okay, so I'm also very happy to be able to go on today. It's just a thank you for indulging us here. So I just wanted to make a couple of comments before we get into the actual budget units. So as you know, Social Services is primarily funded through state and federal dollars. Our final recommended budget is a total of $65,468,137, with a total of 10 budgets. The combined budgets are an increase fiscal year 21-22 in the amount, or over fiscal year 21-22 in the amount of $4,509,000, primarily based on the increase to salaries, which totaled $3,238,760. We do have, when fully staffed, 274 positions at the department. Right now, we are between around 20%, 21% vacant, back and forth a little bit. The county general fund contributions to this year's budget total $152,141, and those include $70,648 to Budget Unit 5168, which are the senior programs. This covers the county's match per the Joint Powers Agreement with Mendocino County for the Area Agency on Aging and a portion of the funds supporting senior services through the county. Additionally, the county agreed to contribute this year $81,493 from the general fund to pay for an analyst position for housing and urban development programs delivered through the department, which includes Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher and also emergency housing vouchers, which are relatively new, and we continue to operate that program through the COC. These programs are administratively underfunded, as they are typically part of a diversified housing authority where income derives from a variety of sources, including housing development. And so the HUD subsidy we receive for operating these programs is inadequate, essentially. It's unusual for them to be, sitting alone as they are. The bulk of our budget is derived from funding generated through continuous time studying to state and federal funding sources. As has been mentioned before, our department, as with other state and county government organizations, has struggled with filling a number of vacant positions. At the present time, we have a 21% vacancy rate, despite dedicating 3 full-time staff to recruitment, retention, and staff support within our office and funding a full-time position at county HR. Our program management staff also meet regularly to develop and implement new recruitment and retention strategies. Some of those are based off of a workshop that the sheriff had with his recruitment or recruiter expert. And we do believe that we're moving forward, but it's slow, and the hiring process itself takes time. So these changes have, they're coming slowly, and we continue to have some turnover. Our program management staff also meet regularly to develop and implement new recruitment and retention strategies for the department, including the implementation of some of the incentives that have been made available through the county, including hiring incentives and the referral incentive if you know of someone else who follows through with applying. You'll notice that we have not removed our vacant positions from our budget. And I just wanted to explain that just to ensure that everyone understands our strategy. Our vacancy rate will, over time, impact our ability to keep these positions in our budget as fewer hours are studied to. But at the present time, we are well positioned to fill all vacancies should eligible candidates apply. And the way that our funding works is that our employees continuously time study. So those are to state and federal programs, and that is how we draw down our funding. And so without those staff, we're not drawing down that same level of funding. So vacancies really are do over time negatively impact our overall budget because we're not time studying those hours. And so for us, because of past time studies, the number of staff that we have right now really reflect the amount of work that is done at the department and needs to continue to be done. But right now we have staff who are covering, and we're meeting our mandates, but it's clearly not ideal. We do need to refill those positions. And so I have elected not to cut those positions at this time. It actually would just simply happen over time if we fail to fill those positions. And let's see, where did I write down? Oh, so we have 274 full-time positions, and right now we're probably closer to 220. And you can imagine the workload difference there. They feel it. And so we're throwing everything at this effort to get people hired and get them to stay. So DSS does continue to meet our mandates, and in the long term, a reduced staffing level will negatively impact our ability to meet the needs of the public that we serve. So it is imperative that we move forward and get this done. And, you know, I feel similar to Probation Chief Howe in that I think right now is just really an unusual time. This is not unique to Lake County. At California Welfare Directors Association, we regularly talk about our difficulties in hiring, and it's definitely statewide. Some a little more, some a little less, but in some counties. But for the small counties, it is across the board. And I think the only way, you know, to solve this is just to move through it and continue to put the resources towards it that we are doing right now. Highlights over the last fiscal year include qualification of 51%, which equals around 34,814 people of our population for Medi-Cal benefits. We issued $3.5 million of CalFresh benefits to more than 13,000 residents, recruited and approved an additional 16 family resource homes within the county, bringing the total to 43. If you remember when I got here, we had almost no local families for foster homes, resource families. So that is just really shows the dedication of that staff, and also I think the community working with us to refer people and generate some interest around that, because it is so much better for reunification services for children to be placed in county. They can stay in their local schools, and then they also have access to visitation and other supportive services through the department so much more easily than when they are placed outside the county. And we're also saving a lot of social work time that way, because we had people in their cars constantly, you know, going to pick kids up, bring them, you know, to facilitate the whole visitation thing. And so I'm just really proud of that number and of the staff that made it happen. So I just want to make sure and give them a shout out here. Through targeted efforts, we have also increased relative placement, which is another very positive thing. So those, you know, are relatives who are coming in and becoming approved. Reduced the number of children in out-of-home placements from 109 to 74 through pre-placement prevention services, another really great statistic. Issued $6.5 million over the year in CalWorks benefits, serving an average of 450 families a month. And then we also issued $600,000 in supportive services benefits over the last year, covering child care, transportation assistance, family stabilization, and other ancillary services. One thing I would add there is that employment services, those programs that are run through employment services, a lot of that has been deferred over COVID. And so that is now coming back. And I really, you know, staff is looking forward to that. And I hope that, you know, the population who can make use of those programs, you know, we'll see them coming back in. Then, what else? We supported 2,100 IHSS recipients through the, and then also we have 1,800 registered providers for IHSS. So, you know, this does not change. This is a huge program in Lake County, and will likely, you know, continue to be based on our demographic, high number of both disabled and seniors in the community. And we successfully migrated to the new statewide CalSAWS, so statewide automated welfare system. Eligibility system through the dedicated effort of our incredible management and support staff. It was a huge move. There were 3 systems in the state of California, and they're all going to the single CalSAWS finally. And there still is one group that will be migrating, but very soon we'll have just one statewide system. So goals for our next fiscal year include the department will continue to lead the mass care and shelter efforts during disaster preparation and obviously sheltering activities. continue to maximize existing funding sources, and pursue future funding sources for new programs to continue to serve the residents of Lake County. We are always looking for ways to maximize efficiency, support and grow current and new programs for the benefit of our community. And we do regularly have meetings around this and how, to make programs more efficient. Pursue, Lucy already said that. And then we also would like to continue with permanent remote work and flexible schedules for a certain segment of our staff. It doesn't work in all positions, but for our eligibility staff, it is, has been extremely successful. And there doesn't appear to be a real need for them to be on site. It's the one program that I can say, it really does seem to help us both with recruitment and retention. And related to that, they sit at Anderson Ranch, or they did prior to COVID, which really has left a huge vacant room at Anderson Ranch. And so moving forward, we will be taking to the Space Committee some plans to decrease our leased properties. So there's a couple of buildings that we likely could integrate into the building at Anderson Ranch where the eligibility workers have sat in the past. So you can look for us to be recommending that and bringing that forward here in the near future. One of the reasons that I haven't done it yet, well, I think we're still in a little bit of flux, but it's also, it hasn't been very clear as to whether the board would support a permanent remote work outside of the pandemic. And so, once we have some clarification around all of those things, I think there's some real cost savings to be had. And also, I think it does go to retention of staff as well. Yeah. Then, the other part of that plan would include some shared workspaces. So it's basically, I'm sure you've all heard the term hoteling. So people would be coming in and they would have a place to come in, if they needed to come in for a specific reason and plug in their computer and work from the office. And so that's just another element of that same plan. And then we have also are contracting with the company. We're piggybacking on the county's contract to digitize the bulk of our records. And so we're in the middle of that process and talking with them about, we have such a variety of document types and also automated systems. And so some programs need it more than others, where there's a lot of paper documents that will need to get scanned in and saved. And every program has a different retention rule also. So it's a job, but I really think, we need to get this done, and it's a great opportunity to have someone already selected to do that work, and they've been very helpful to us in, developing a plan for social services. And I'm sure we'll be talking about that more in the coming year. And finally, we just are always looking for ways to pursue different technologies that will help support our staff. And this does include, even switching systems. Like right now, for example, we do have a really antiquated accounting system. And so we are looking for a replacement with that will be compatible with the county system. And hopefully, we'll find that magic fit there, because you really have to make sure that it works for the county. And we have had a lot of support from the auditor's office in terms of identifying what that would look like. So we're moving forward with that, and that's really what I wanted to talk about. And I have Mickey here to kind of go over each budget unit quickly and answer any questions that you may have.
Hello. Thank you for letting us present this afternoon. I know you've had a very long day. I don't know how much detail you would like me to go into, or if you even need me to go over each one of these budget units. I know you have them all in front of you. You can look at each one, but if it would be helpful. No? What we do, I'm just going to, that was Stephen. That was Stephen. We have 10 budget units that total approximately $65 million. Our largest one is the 5011 budget unit, which is our administration budget for social services, and that is our largest one. I think Stephen said 35 million and some odd change. The others are supporting budgets and also specialized budgets. If you would like me to discuss each one, or if you have specific questions about any one of them, I'm happy to answer to the best of my ability.
So, Stephen, sorry, Mr. Carter, I know that you brought up that we have this new found money because of the teeter fund that just deposited some money that is not necessarily within the budget that we're looking at right now, correct?
It is not, no.
Okay.
They're
You said that
they're
that
self-funded.
You said that that can quickly disappear. I don't know if you already have items that are dedicated to that, but I do know that I've had a couple phone calls in the past for help with adult protective services. And that budget, in my opinion, is woefully low. I'm going to say what I think I remember I heard, that it was like 10,000, or it was a pretty low budget of what's available after the rest of the overhead stuff is gone. We have a large senior community, and I'd love to, I'm not looking for like 100,000 or 200,000, but if it's as low as what I just said, if we can increase that to be more capable when we have seniors who fall through the cracks, that we receive phone calls and we're only able to say, sorry, we're already out of resources for you, I would love to see that increase.
I'm going to let Mickey and Crystal answer that one because they have ability to do that internally.
So I'll just give you a quick response here. So this year, actually, at the legislative level, Adult Protective Services was expanded. Traditionally, that is money that the county has, that we, social services, have decided to set aside, and that's why it's always been woefully low, because there is actually no state funds to do any of that work. It's completely different than child welfare. I think a lot of people are very used to child welfare having a budget to be able to provide services and supports to children and family that they're serving. And Adult Protective Services has had nothing, literally, no money put aside for that. So with Adult Protective Service expansion, the age for eligible Adult Protective Services reports is now 60 instead of 65. That was a big change. And then there has been more funding put towards Adult Protective Services, and I would expect that to continue. Yes, we at the department can fund things when, we can take from our money to make things available, but if you're doing any kind of like an ongoing fix for people, it's usually not a one-time only thing. And as you mentioned, it's a huge it's over 30% in this county. And so, and it also applies to the disabled. And so, we look forward to doing more, and we are, in fact, our staff actually participated in a video to explain adult protective service expansion. With the state of California, and I think that you'll be seeing a lot of changes in the future, and we can come to the board and do a presentation on that. It's really slowly unfolding, but this is an huge aging population in the state of California, and I think this governor has made it somewhat of a priority to expand services in that area, well, and the legislature, obviously. But always, if there's a specific situation, that people are aware of, they can call either the Adult Protective Services. We have a manager there who's relatively new, and she's excellent, Amy Shemansky. And, it's not for lack of wanting to do that for, our clients that we serve. It's just always been an unfunded part of that program. And so once we have more information, we will come and do a presentation to let, the community know really what direction it's headed in, and also the change in the reporting laws.
Yeah, that'd be great. I know I've referred a couple to you in the past year, so.
I can also add to that is what the manager over Adult Services felt was the best way to handle these expansion funds for the Adult Protective Service, which is just a small part of our adult services. They chose to put staff toward it, so they would have more response, quicker response to any calls, any needs that they would have there. So they wanted to put a supervisor over Adult Protective Services to be able to provide more service. So that was what we added to the budget this year.
Okay. Thank you.
What's that? Oh, yeah, we also have a program called Home Safe that we receive funding for. That's going to be a new program that they're implementing this year.
So that is a program we just recently opted into, and it's not a lot of money. I think it's around $200,000, but basically what it is meant for are those folks who have a place to live, and there are things, that need to be repaired, or, something safer about the home. And so, that's kind of exciting, because this is really the first flexible money that we have had, through the state for that senior population.
Okay. My last question is IHSS. With the new laws that just came into play, I know we haven't seen the minimum wage increase, but in a very indirect way we did. Does this budget prepare us for any kind of change? Or just what we've agreed on?
We negotiated with the union last fiscal year, and it covers the increase to the minimum wage. So we have agreed to pay a certain portion, which is our IHSS MOE. And this year in our budgets, it's a bit over $7 million for the year.
And my concern is the $22 an hour for fast food workers, which it's not a minimum wage increase, but it will absolutely impact every minimum wage or those that are close to minimum wage, and that's just what I'm worried about. So I thought
Even for our own staff.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. If there's no other questions, is there another budget item we need to go through, or can I open it up for public input?
All 10 of those budgets, I just lumped into one big blurb.
I have a hand up from the public. Betsy Kahn, if you'd like to unmute and state your name for the record, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mrs. Dolby and Mrs. Marketan. My concern is about the emergency management services for older adults and disabled persons, the use of senior centers as designated disaster centers that was called for in the current Community Wildfire Protection Plan, those aspects of managing services for older adults, caregivers, and disabled family members. I didn't see anything or hear anything mentioned in your budget report. So even though the capacity would be, the ability to add capacity might be coming from a Department of Homeland Security funding through the Office of the Emergency Services or something else, I'd still like to know if you recognize the need for that level of assistance and have considered that in how you allocate your funding. Thank you.
You want us to respond to the question?
Yeah.
Okay. There's no allocated funds for emergency services for us, so we don't set aside or create any part of the budget that covers that. We are mandated to be disaster service workers, and we follow those guidelines, and we make that work within our budget, waiting for FEMA funds and things like that, but we really don't have any allocated funds for emergency
It's a
services.
reimbursement thing.
Well, even in a reimbursement thing, through FEMA would be our only way of getting
That's what I'm
reimbursed.
saying,
Yeah,
which takes time for us to finalize everything in order to give
Exactly.
you the final reimbursement.
yeah, there's a lot of hoops to jump through for that. So there has been discussions,
I don't
there
know why
has
it
been
takes so long.
discussions, Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. It is happening, though, and it's pretty thrilling to see, and I'd like to thank our auditor for that. It's just, it is, it's a morass of paperwork when you have the number of staff that we have responding to disasters like that. And it's not like we're out on the fire line, but, we turn in that paperwork, but it's a huge, laborious process that the auditor's office then has to go through to submit to FEMA and, turn that money around, and then to re-justify it to return to us. And so we have received some funds, and it's pretty exciting to see that. But back to Ms. Khan's concern, and I know this is a big concern considering the size of our senior population, but we really do not, we really have very relatively small funding for the senior population as a whole, and none that is directed towards, specific to disaster response. That does not mean that through the Area Agency on Aging and then through Adult Services that we're regularly talking to people about developing their evacuation plan, learning the code of their area for evacuation, and really understanding that we do not have staff that can assist in evacuation, as we are not first responders. And so we will be there for them at a shelter, and will help them, at that level. But beyond that, it really is outside of the scope of the Department of Social Services.
And we just had 2 of your staff members who have been absolutely a part of the evacuation center setup received their awards yesterday. And so I know that they've got the experience and they're learning more in order to be able to do better, unfortunately, for the things we know we'll need in the future.
Yeah, it's not for lack of wanting to do this, and I know that. I think that's understood, and it is inadequate. And 2 things happened over this last fiscal years, or no, the last 2 fiscal years, is the California Department of Social Services created a CDSS disaster services branch at the state level, but did not pass any administrative funding for a similar workers to provide those services ongoing at the county level. And that's, we actually, this 20 small counties, we proposed some legislation that was taken forward by CWDA last year to give us funding for continuous disaster responders. In large counties, they have a disaster services sitting within social services, but obviously in this county, we're in a different financial situation. And so we're asking that the state make that funding available because it's, the program people are the same people who are doing your disaster response. And then the other thing that CDSS implemented at the state level was a housing department. And likewise, no administrative funding at the county level to apply for those grants or to follow through and implement. And we did get the Home Key Award. It was not this year, but the last fiscal year, in partnership with Adventist. But I likely will not apply for more funding because we don't have the administrative staff to support, whatever, the project would look like. And so, hopefully, there will be some funding for staff in the future, and we can make better use of those two programs that were developed at the state level.
All right. I don't see any other public comments, so I'll bring it back to the board, and we'll go from there for action.
Just want to follow up on that last statement there. If there's anything we could do as a board of putting a letter together of support and looking to do that, please bring that to us, and we'd be willing to do that, obviously, because both those things you just talked about are critical for us here in Lake County. So
They are.
if there's any opportunity to bring it up at CSAC, RCRC, continue to push that and see if we can get any movement on that.
Thank you. I will do that.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go for it. All right, Mr. Chair, I move to approve budget units 5011, 5012, 5121, 5125, 5164, 5165, 5168, 5169, 5281, and 5282.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank
And
you,
thank you for letting us sneak in here today.
and enjoy your retirement.
with that, looks like we're going to come to a halt here and recess till tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., and continue on with Stephen. We'll just figure it out.
We will
or-
begin with the auditor's office, then we will follow up with the treasurer, tax collector, and then we will begin on the schedule with Joe Medical Services and all the way
All
down.
the way down from there. Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow morning. We'll go to a recess.